Hey, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to another video. And this is a paid request from my friend Efree. Thank you so much for that, my friend. And for those interested in requesting any type of videos, whether it be a topic, a review, a re-review, commentary, video game let's try, or for an hour, or let's play, random, whatever the case, PayPal is usually the best bet, or join my Patreon. The links are down below in the info box, or over there in the info box where the info box is. And this week on YouTube. But Efree wanted me to look into two more requests, which are featured in this box set, The Game of Clones from 7 Films. Have not had a chance to get through the whole box set. Actually, so far, I've gotten to the films that Efree requested. One is a documentary and one is a movie. The movie I'll probably do after this, but I am talking about, in this video, the documentary, Enter the Clones of Bruce. Which you can see, because I remember the poster's probably going to be over here, so that way you see over there. There we go. And you take the disc out. It is a single disc. While the rest of these are pretty much 2 movies per disc, but the documentary is its own thing. Now, before I get into the documentary, I've said before, but in case people haven't seen those videos, Bruceploitation has always been a very intriguing thing for me. It's like how some people would feel about slasher films. Although I do like quite a few slasher films. But whether they're good or bad, I'm very intrigued by a lot of them. I think because if I truly think about it, the very first Kung Fu film I saw was a Bruceploitation film. And that was Bruce the Superhero. When I was a kid, lived on a farm in the middle of nowhere in Iowa, had only 4 channels on TV, ABC, CBS, a second CBS, and PBS. And the only times you could rent movies is maybe at the gas station or a little supermarket. And they're only going to have the popular movies. They're not going to have, a Bruceploitation film or stuff. But then every once in a while, we would go over to Minnesota, and those stores would have a little bit more variety to buy. And I remember like Godzilla vs. Megalon. That was the first Godzilla film I saw. And then the first, which I had heard of Bruce Lee. So when I saw Bruce the Superhero, I'm like, oh, that's Bruce Lee. And then I really enjoyed the film for what it is. Yes, it's goofy and silly. There's a guy with a snake hand. Bolo Yun, who I remember from Bloodsport, because I grew up loving Jean-Claude Van Damme. And oh, this guy from Bloodsport, a double impact. And he's fighting a bull. It wasn't until years and years later I realized, oh no, that's not the actual Bruce Lee. And then years after that, when I'm like, oh, this Bruceploitation thing. It's a very fascinating subject. And the idea of an actor having a whole genre of films based on him. Can't really think of anybody else that has had that happen. I mean, many actors have passed away. James Dean passed away. But he didn't have a lot of movies where they were Jimmy Dean and Stephen Dean and Anthony Dean and Jimmy Walker Dean, trying to be Jimmy Dean. Like, you didn't have all that stuff going on. So I was always fascinated with the subject. I've seen a couple Bruceploitation films throughout the years. My absolute favorite is Enter the Game of Death, which is on here. Which I haven't had a chance to rewatch that, but I did flip through it, and I think the picture quality is from, if you have the German Blu-ray, it's the same. But I never could get the German Blu-ray, so this was nice to have here. But Enter the Game of Death is my favorite, but there's a few others I enjoyed. The Ninja Strikes Back that Efree requested, I enjoyed that. Sadly, that's not in the set. I wish it was, though. Bruce the Superhero, of course. Soul Brothers of Kung Fu would be another one I enjoyed. But anyway, when I heard this set was coming out, I was very, very excited. Not only to see some of these films I've never seen before, and hopefully one day I'll have time and check the rest of this out, but it's quite a few movies to get through, so one day down the road. I even picked this up, which is the book that coincides with this, that was sold separately, and very colorful looking book with interviews and stuff and reviews. So there you go. Actually, let me look up the Enter the Demon of Death. I'll get to the documentary in a bit, but I knew this would be a long one, just sort of by getting into Bruceploitation and where I first heard about it. Yeah, Enter the Demon of Death. That's my favorite. Like that poster there. And of course, that right there was that was the German Blu-ray cover. Which I wanted to get that, but it was so expensive. But there you go. I haven't even looked through this book yet, but I just one of those where just flipping through it, I could tell I would enjoy it. But anyway, to get to the subject at hand, one of the other reasons not only to have a good chunk of these films on this set, but also to finally check out this documentary, Enter the Clones of Bruce. And while I have some nitpicks and some negatives about it, overall it was a very fun one. I mean, if I have my favorites of the year, and if I put documentaries in there, I would put in my top 10 favorite things I've seen this year. It went at a very fast pace. It was 90-some minutes long. I mean, I could have seen a 3-hour version of this. Part of me wishes it was, but... Because, yeah, the thing, there was a lot more interviews, a lot more that was said. I kind of wish there was footage where we saw that. But it's more of... Okay, here's people talk more about Bruce Lee, or here's more people talk about Shaw Brothers Studio. But I would like to have seen an extended interview with like Bruce Lee, like what more they had to say, if anything, because I'm sure they said more, just stuff had to be cut out for the pacing of the film. But it's entertaining, it's fast paced, there's a lot of clips involved. They got the big names, the imitators, the Bruce Lee, L.I., Bruce Lee, L.E., Dragon Lee. You got a little bit of Ron Van Cleef, who's known as the Black Dragon. Bruce Lian, the one from The Dragon Lives. That weird one where it's like Bruce Lee's in the underworld, and Popeye and The Man with No Name and James Bond are all in there, and Dracula with his army of mummies or skeletons or whatever the hell it is. Which I did flip through that, and that they definitely... It is very... And then I flipped through them. I didn't watch them all the way through. I just flipped just to see if the disc worked. The discs themselves, so far... Yes, there's going to be scratches. Very noticeable scratches. Some more than others. So if you think it's going to be like picture perfect where all the scratches are cleaned up, you're going to be heavily mistaken. I kind of like the scratches though, because it gives a bit of that grindhouse look. But they didn't do it on purpose, just how it is. They did the best they could. But it's definitely cleaned up. The last time I saw Dragon Lives, it was like I could barely see what was going on. So it's definitely more cleaned up here. You could see, and it's widescreen, or at least you could tell what's going on. So that'll be interesting to watch that again. And looking a lot better. Same with Enter the Demon of Death. But anyway, like I said, very fast paced, very well edited, a lot of info thrown at you. I could have seen a 3-hour version of this. A lot of cool info to be had. Good taste of what Bruceploitation was, and some more crazy moments. And it's not a hit piece. It's not people dogging on it, for an hour. You tell a lot of people like these movies, or they respect these movies, or they were enjoyable these movies, and that was nice to see. I'll go through it in detail, spoilers, and I'll say a lot of the stuff what I like. I'll throw in the nitpicks I have to begin with. Little things I wasn't big on. It's not too many. Obviously, they cannot talk about every single Bruceploitation film. There was probably hundreds of them. But how do you not talk about Dame of Death 2? I know they show footage of it for like 10 seconds. Well, one's talking to the other. But I'm like, how do you not talk about Dame of Death 2? To me, that's one of the best Bruceploitation films. And the whole weird thing where the guy is like a tiger or something, but it's a person, but he's like a tiger suit on, and the whole finale, and it's like a James Bond with this way where it's set, and that's some of the better fights in these Bruceploitation films. And I'm sitting there going, how the hell do you not talk about Dame of Death 2? Like, do you have, like, obviously some of the ones, like Enter the Dame of Death, they talked a little bit about. I would love to have heard more of it. But it's nice it's brought up. The Dragon Lives. And like I said, they can't talk about every film. I get that. Now, of course, I don't want to talk about the actual, the Dame of Death. I get that as well. If I'm pausing, and I'm trying to think of what the running time of this was. 94 minutes. If you took 10 more minutes, right? Just 10 more minutes of, okay, let's talk a little bit about Dame of Death 2. Let's talk a little bit about these other movies. Like, flesh some things out on Enter the Dame of Death. Some of the other films, like whether Enter the Dragon, Enter the... Like, Soul Brothers of Kung Fu. Let's mention that for... even, like, if a minute or less. Soul Brothers Kung Fu. I know you can't talk about every single one, but there was a bit more I wish could have been talked about with some of these, especially the more hidden gems of the genre, in my opinion. Also, there's some people who love to have heard more, like Bruce Lee with L.E. Like, at the end of the film, understandably, they took a bit on Bruce Lee, because he's the one that kind of went away, and for legitimate reasons, because his wife died. He wanted to take care of his kids, and he went into orthopedic, kind of like massage therapist, like helping people with their spines and stuff. And you tell he's the guy who is like, he talked about it, but he was like kind of not proud of it. And he's not bratty about it, and you can understand his point of view. So I get why we hear what happened to him, but Bruce Lee, L.E., other than okay, he's going to China, and he's going to get paid $1 million, but for what? That was the last thing we hear about him. That he says Bruce Lee, L.E., my favorite. What happened to him? What has he done since? And that's what I mean. I think the ending felt a bit rushed. We're rushing to the finish line. I mean, no, let's hold back a bit. Okay, you talk a little bit about Bruce Lee. Now talk a little bit about Dragon Lee. They do a little bit where he's, I guess, got divorced or something. But he's in an office, but I don't know what he does for a living. That's right. It would have been nice to hear a bit more of Dragon Lee when he knew it was over, and then the years afterward that he did. They did that for Bruce Lee the most. But I wish they put that time into Dragon Lee and Bruce Lee and the other Bruces. Even like Ron Van Cleef, to have a little bit of him, of how that whole dwindled, or how that all ended. That's what I mean. Like, I thought the ending felt a bit rushed. I wish there was a bit more of an epilogue. Dot the I's, crossing the T's of some of these guys at the end of it. Again, if you don't want to spend the 10 minutes on talking about the other films I mentioned, because again, how can you talk about every film? At least 10 minutes on that, or less. I think that would have been nice to see. And part of me, like, I really wanted to hear more of Bruce Lee, because there is a commentary. I didn't get a chance to listen to the whole thing, just a lack of time. But I did flip through some of the commentary, and they mentioned how Bruce Lee, L.E., from Enter the Demon Death and Bruce's Superiority, and my favorite of these guys, he got in last minute, which was nice though, that it still did get into it. But apparently he was also the guy that remembered the most and had the most details. I'm like, that's the guy I want to hear the most if he had the most details. Like, I want to hear him talk about each of these films. How was it doing Challenge of the Tiger? I want more details. How was it filming the scene in Enter the Game of Death with this weird snake guy? How was that? Like, that's the thing. That was also I was missing. I want to hear him talk about that snake bit. How was it deal with this guy? I know, like, okay, he hired the guy, but it was so brief. I wanted to hear more. Like, how was it? How did he get to be a director? And how was it directing the films? And how did that work out when he's directing but he's starring? And the fame of it, and in what he did afterward. Like I said, at times it felt like we were rushing to the finish line in certain things, and again 10-15 minutes, just let things breathe a little bit. That would have been nice to see. It was fast paced, almost too fast paced for me, but for the subject matter, for the amount of information they did have in there, for how compact it is, it was rather enjoyable. I mean, it would be nice to see a documentary on each of these, like Bruce Lee, if he remembers that much detail. I doubt it will never happen, but... Or at least extended interviews. I think that would have been nice if we had extended interviews on here, on the set. Because I know, like, some of them is like, okay, here's 10 minutes talking about... It's on the Enter the Game of Death disc, but we're not really talking about Enter the Game of Death. We're talking about kind of Game of Death clones. But they talk more about... Well, I guess Goodbye Bruce Lee was on there too. His last Game of Death. So, and they talk about a bit of the actual Game of Death. Not too much of Enter the Game of Death. So, I don't know. I'm all over the place. Let's get back to this. But as for what I did like hearing about good, consistent order of events. They show the importance of the Shaw Brothers studio. And this is spoilers. If you don't want to hear about spoilers of the documentary, beware. Some people have early stories of Bruce Lee. I like the story one guy tells about how this guy was being cocky. Oh yeah, you think you two fight? Okay, show me. And Bruce dodges a slap. He dodges a punch and slaps the guy. He dodges. He slaps the guy. He dodges. He slaps the guy. And also, I think it's the guy named Mars, or maybe it's someone else. I forget. I'm sorry about the details. But he mentions about what Bruce would do is have electric shocks. And how it was so tight, like if you pinched, the blood would shoot out. And also, like, he would take vitamins. I mean, no wonder his body crashed out if that's the case. Because the body can only handle so much. I mean, I didn't know he took electric shocks like that. And apparently, if not a daily basis, it was what it felt like. Again, your body's can only handle so much. But, you know, it's up to speed about Golden Harvest, the other company, the big boss being successful, Enter the Dragon, him passing away, and how people everywhere, not just America, but France, Germany, they wanted more Bruce Lee. Because he was on the cusp of stardom and people were starved. And like, well, we can't. He died. What can we do? So they tried to sell with their sword movies and stuff, but no one was buying. So they're like, well, they want Bruce Lee. Let's try to find another type of Bruce Lee. So they look and they find this guy that his name was James. And ultimately they change his name to Bruce Lee, and he mentions how he didn't like that. He loved Bruce Lee, he respected Bruce Lee. He had a family to take care of. He did his first film, Super Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, which I think is on here, right? I think so. I haven't seen it yet. I think it's here. Wait, I passed it. Because there's The Dragon the Hero, Rage of the Dragon. Here, Super Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, yeah. As well as The Dragon Lives. So, that right there. Again, I haven't seen it yet. But he does his first film. His salary gets cut. He's like, okay, I don't like it, but I'll do with it because A, I have a family to take care of, and B, I wanted to honor Bruce Lee, so if I could show people a bit of Jeet Kune Do and so forth, then maybe I've accomplished something. And how there's this series of fictional biopics. And they interview a lot of people, including Michael Worth, who seems like a very nice guy, very knowledgeable about this stuff. Definitely one of the big guys behind this set. He's been doing research on Bruceploitation for years and years and years. So he's definitely the reason this exists is because of Michael Worth. But he mentions about how, like, with all these different biopics, Bruce had like 18 different lives apparently. Because each one was different. Like, one said that he was born in China when really he was born in San Francisco, and in one he got this weird dragon thing to test and train with, but all those people in the West, they corrupted him and gave him this thing, so he was obsessed. And yeah, because we Americans, we know how to do that. Okay. And like I said, Bruce Lee, with those movies and the Fist of Fury sequels, he didn't like taking the name, but they made him do it. And you tell he was like later. He even says he was later repulsed that he imitated Bruce Lee. So you tell that he's a guy that, and he throughout it, like he said, people would tell him, you know what, man, if you didn't look like, well, I mean, he doesn't look like Bruce Lee, but if you didn't do this, who knows? Maybe you could have gone and done something else and gotten more successful. Because after it, people didn't really take him seriously. So, because he was the first and his seemed a bit, more tragic, I can see why they centered on him a bit more. Then they talk about Dragon Lee and they interview him. His real name is Moon. He's from South Korea. He did a film. An American producer found his film. And that's what I mean, like, hearing about this movie, which I had heard of, that's what I liked about this. I heard of the real Bruce Lee. I remember the poster which they show of the real Bruce Lee. I'm like, what's the story behind this? And here's the thing. They took one of Dragon Lee's movies. They cut from 90 minutes to 60 minutes. And the other 30 minutes, they replaced it with footage of Bruce Lee when he was a kid, doing films, and Bruce Lee, like the very, very, very early films he did. And they put that in the first 30 minutes, so it's like a pseudo-documentary, so they could advertise it as the real Bruce Lee. We promise you don't see the real Bruce Lee. It's like, yeah, you are. And then here's a Bruceploitation film. Actually, it wasn't even meant to be Bruceploitation. Here's another guy who fights some people in the second part of the movie. As some of I don't know if the clips they use are the movies that's on this. Like, there's one movie where Dragon Lee has this thumb chuck. It's not a nunchuck, but it's like attached to his thumb. I'm like, is that? I forget the name of the movie. Is that one of the movies on this? I hope so. There's also a weird one, like magnets. Like, he gets magnets, and then he can, like, repel people, and, like, repel swords. I'm like, what the hell is this? And then he seems to be not the most proud, but, you know, he did it to appease folks. He did, like, I don't know, 36 films or so. And then we get to my favorite, Bruce Lee. Let's see, I think he's here on this book, actually. My favorite. I wish there was a whole documentary just on this guy. This guy here. There we go. Sorry, this guy right here. Love that guy. My favorite. From Bruce the Superhero to Enter the Game of Death to Challenge of the Tiger and the Ninja Strikes Back. I didn't realize he was from Burma, which of course Burma people know from Rambo 4. So I didn't know he was from Burma. And he was a Burmese boxer, which is interesting. So he's definitely seemed like the real deal. Apparently Lo Wei, who's done other stuff, spoke with him and got him into movies. And that's for me. I would like to have heard more from him, because I remember he was in this film I have called Inframan from back in the day, and I love Inframan. It stars Danny Lee, who is one of the people with Chow Yun-fat in The Killer, John Woo's film. Danny Lee starred in that, and Inframan was a take on Ultraman from Japan, but here is the Shaw Brothers style, and I love Inframan. And Bruce Lee has a small part in that. So it would, but again, you can't fit everything into it. It's a lot of stuff to do. So I know I'm being greedy, but hey, I'm being honest. Can't fit everything in there. I get it. I did like the story that, like, the way he tells it, he didn't, like, he's doing stuff for real, so he blocks. I guess, like, he later on, like, he works his forearm so much. But he blocked, and the guy broke his bone just from him blocking the shot. And the first Bruceploitation film he did was The Big Boss Part 2. And like I think one of the things, well, not only for nostalgia, and not only because I grew up with him the most, I also agree with, I forget who the French guy was. I think he did something called the Bruceploitation Bible. Which I don't know if I have that. I might have that. I don't know. He mentioned how Bruce Lee seemed like he had the most spirit. And that's why I felt like he felt the most gung-ho about it. Like Bruce Lee and Dragon Lee, they were ashamed of it. They were like, I wish I didn't do it. Bruce Lee seems the opposite. He even says, you call me whatever you want as long as you pay me. And I think he did change his name. Just like when Bruce Lee, he says, well, my name is James, but I was called Bruce Lee. The other guy, my name is Moon. This is my other name, but then they call me Dragon Lee. Bruce Lee is like, hey, I'm Bruce Lee. That's what I mean. He just seemed the most gung-ho, the most in it to win it. I get the other guy's attitude. I perfectly do. But I liked his attitude the most about that. And again, if the commentary is right and he remembers his movies the most of all of them, I would love to hear more from this guy. It's too bad he's not like on any of the... Well, I guess he doesn't speak English, so how could he do commentaries, to be fair? but no. And not only that, like apparently when this documentary and other stuff was going around the U.S., he was the one guy that joined and was in the there's a lot of behind the scenes like on their Facebook. Like he's on the festivals and screenings and tour of America, and he's still the guy who's like the most gung ho about it. I love that attitude. And that was my favorite part, is seeing how he looks today. Talked a little bit about Challenge of the Tiger. This guy Dick Randall, how he's like my godfather. He helped me a lot in these movies. You see behind the scenes footage of doing Challenge of the Tiger, which is funny because that's the next review I'm doing, thanks to my friend Efree. So as I see behind the scenes, Ninja Strikes Back, they show footage of. Challenge of the Tiger is one I'm reviewing. But actually, no, it's more footage of Ninja Strikes Back they show. But they do talk a bit of Challenge of the Tiger as well. And they even show like a little old interview he did, which was cool to see. I never knew this was part of it, where someone asked, like, how do you stay in shape? And he's like, I don't know if he was serious or he was just playing up for the camera. Snake blood. I drink snake blood. I'm like, I don't know if he's serious or if he's just, or just, it's like a wrestler. He fits the gimmick and he doesn't, no kayfabe. I mean, it's all kayfabe, all kayfabe. I don't know. But that's kind of interesting about him. About shooting the Coliseum for, that was the Ninja Strikes Back. Like I said, I wish there was more to him. I wish, but I'm being greedy. But yeah, they talked a little bit about Bolo Yun, who was in so many movies. Apparently, I did listen to the commentary part of this. They did try to get Bolo, but I guess he wanted too much money. But they do talk with his son, which is nice to see his son. And about how Bolo was just like in every other one of these movies. And I like I forget who said it. A reason why Bolo was probably in so many of these movies is that when you watch Enter the Dragon, a part of you is thinking, is Bruce Lee going to fight this guy? And they're like, oh man, that guy Bolo, that big guy, and Bruce Lee never fought? What would have happened if they would fight? Well, and then there's like the what if scenario. There's a lot of these movies that what if scenario. Like, what if this is how Bruce died? What if this is how Bruce died when it's the fake biopics? Or what if Bruce Lee was alive and got to do a James Bond movie or an Indiana Jones type of movie? Or what if he did this? What if he did that? So you almost like live vicariously through these imitators to see the movies you never got to see with Bruce. They talked about Angela Mao, which is cool to see her, but I'll be honest, I don't really know why she was in it, to be fair. Like, it's cool to see her. She was in Enter the Dragon. She didn't have a whole lot to say. There wasn't a whole lot of info. And I guess someone said like she's like a female Bruce Lee. I had never heard that before. So call it me not being knowledgeable on her. But I mean, when this is like Enter the Clones of Bruce Lee, she's not a clone. She's not trying to be Bruce Lee. She just didn't fit. You know, I highly doubt there's going to be, if there's a volume 2, I doubt there's going to be any Angela Mao movies. I hope there's a volume 2, as I hit my, see, it's Angela Mao, she's getting pissed at me, she's like, shut up. I hope there's a volume 2. If so, I hope films like The Ninja Strikes Back, or Soul Brothers of Kung Fu, or Bruce the superhero did in this and stuff, but it depends on what they can find, among other stuff, of course. But anyway, like I said, she didn't seem like she fit in there. I'm sorry. I still don't know why she was in there. It's like they kind of try to explain it, but I would have preferred, again, the stuff I was talking about before, like either at the end, little epilogue, or I would have preferred more time with that. Like I said, she wasn't a Bruce Lee imitator. She didn't do Bruceploitation films. She might have been a co-star in one of them, or two, so, but not the, you know what I mean? Even Sammo Hung, who has a little bit, makes more sense. He did a film called Enter the Fat Dragon, where he's a fan, but he's pretending to be Bruce Lee, but he's a fan of Bruce Lee. And even in the film, he gets mad at a Bruce Lee imitator because you're not like him, you disrespect him. That's a fun film. And Samuel talks a little bit about it. That even makes more sense. But yeah, it's cool to see Angela Mao, but like I said, I don't think she belonged. I still don't know why she was in it. Sorry. That's just my honest feelings on it. I do like some of the info about the making of films, like how sometimes they would write pages on the set. The injuries, like Bruce Lee, the Ellie, he got stabbed in the hand by a fork. I'm like, does he mean a sai? Like Raphael Ninja Turtles? Or does he mean like an actual fork? But I would think he would know the difference, so. I mean, how the hell did he get stabbed by a fork? What movie was that on? They talk about 42nd Street, where a lot of these films were shown. It was cool to see the retro footage of how 42nd Street was back then compared to now. You have a little bit of Ron Van Cleef and a little interview with him. Apparently he had met the actual Bruce Lee. And the way he says that Bruce was impressed with him, that he called him the Black Dragon. That's what he says. They also talk about how France and Germany also really were into Bruceploitation. It wasn't just America. It was these guys as well. So that was nice to see there. How worldwide success this was. It would have been nice to hear about what Hong Kong felt about this. Like China. Like, did these films did they do well? Like, they talked a lot about how they did well in the U.S. And then eventually how it did well in France and Germany. But how did, like, Hong Kong feel about it? Like, I do think for this documentary, it would have been nice to hear, not a whole lot, but there had been some people that were just detractors and just absolutely hated, despised these. And, you know, to see the other side of it, I get it, this is a love letter and you're promoting these films to buy, so I don't want an hour-long bash fest. But, like, maybe I love these type of films, other people do, but, like, the other side where people are like, what the fuck, you know. And not like, oh, a charming way, like, this is garbage, this sucks, you know. To see the other side of things. Bronson Lee, he gets mentioned. I would like to have heard a little bit more about him, about how that all came about. He was a wannabe Bruce Lee, but he's got a Charles Bronson mustache. But it's nice that he was mentioned. I did like the part where this one guy, he did a film, and then either in France or Germany, they were trying to sell him. And it's like, well, how do we do this? Well, I mean, there's one guy called Bruce Lee, and one guy called Bruce Lee. But just to look at all the vowels, there's an I, there's an E. How about an O? Bruce Lowe? So, like, this other guy, he didn't know till years later, like, I didn't even know it was called Bruce Lowe. And like people show him a poster, like he's laughing about it. Like I didn't even know it was called Bruce Lowe. Like that was a fun story. Or Bruce Lee fights back from the grave. I like that they tell a little bit of the story about that. But I almost wanted to hear more about the just how much that is a lie. But they do tell a story about how I guess they went to a grave and they dug a hole and they had a guy with a Bruce Lee mask jump out of the grave. That was an interesting story. But I would like to have heard more about. Again, how about they do go into how some of the marketing was very misleading on other films. And some of the posters were just flat out lies. So I do like that they mentioned that. And some of the weirdest stuff, like Bruce fighting gorillas in some movie. I don't remember what movie that was. Challenge of the Tiger they mentioned a bit. Where, and I'll mention that when I review the film, Jack Klugman from The Odd Couple and Jane Seymour are in it. Yeah, Jane Seymour from Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. They did not. They were at a party and they stole the footage. Bruce, go and shake their hands. We got their footage. All right, now they're in the film. And they're promoted as co-starring in the film. When they probably... Like, Jane Seymour to this day probably still doesn't know she's in a Bruceploitation film. I like that they bring up the film Pieces. Which is the guy who produced a lot of Bruce Leigh's films. He also produced a lot of B-movie horror films. They don't talk about it too much, but pretty much Bruce Leigh says, I didn't even know what I was doing. Like, the guy told me, come here and do this. Okay. Shot for a day. Goodbye. So I do like that they mention it. Because that was one of those things, like, yeah, he was in Pieces. I'd love to know how he got into, what was that, Future Hunters or Robert Patrick? I think that was him, co-star with Robert, I believe it was him. Co-star. He has one sequence with Robert Patrick where they fight someone. Like, I wonder if that was another thing like this, where, was it Dick Randall or someone else, they were producing it. They do mention the clones of Bruce Lee, Dragon Lives Again. They go a little bit into that. They interview the guy, Bruce Leon, who was in Dragon Lives Again. So it's nice it's definitely one of the weird ones, so they put a bit of attention on that. Enter the Game of Death they do mention, and Bruce Leigh said it was his idea to do the film. And that was fascinating. I wish I could have heard more about that. Wait, that was his idea? And they talked a little bit about the snake scene, but not... just not enough for me. They talked with Sammo Hung about Enter the Fat Dragon. And then we're kind of get into the finale where things start changing. Jackie Chan was in Bruceploitation, New Fist of Fury. And of course Jackie's not interviewed, but he didn't really like doing it. He did this film called Staking Eagle Shadow. And of course Drunken Master was very successful. And that was really the beginning of the end. Now, I do like that they mentioned, because I did hear that there were even a couple Jackie Chan imitators getting put into Bruceploitation films. Like, there was one with, I think, Dragon Lee and some Jackie Chan imitator. I forget what it was called. It was like, they showed two of them. Sadly, none of them are on this box set. I don't know if they'll ever be in a... Yeah, it depends on if they find them and if there's a volume 2, but... That's the thing, is when Jackie Chan was becoming successful, it's like with any wave, like slasher films. Look what happened with slasher films. from 1980 to 1984, there were, or maybe not 100, but it felt like 100 slasher films. Maybe it's actually closer than I think. And there's only so many times that you milk it until it's completely dry. And then you see a guy like Jackie Chan, and it's like, okay, we don't need to find the next Bruce Lee because we have the first Jackie Chan. And now we have a different type of action and different type of martial arts, a different type of stuff. And you have police story films and Rumble in the Bronx, and then you have John Woo and those different kind of action films. I wish they kind of delved into that, like the changing of the guard of action. Maybe they didn't need to. But I think that's really what killed Bruceploitation, was that there was so many. It was time. That girl lasts forever. Like anything. People get tired of it. How can I miss you if you don't go away? And it's like, oh, well, we got Jackie Chan. There's this guy. Okay, let's see what he's doing. Wow, is this different? It's comedic, and let's see where this goes. And then John Woo. Wow, that's even very different type of action and gunplay, and let's see where this goes. And then they tell about Bruce Lee, what happened to him afterward. I did like hearing that. Definitely seemed the most tragic. A little bit with Dragon Lee. Again, I don't know what he does for a living nowadays, because I couldn't tell. But I know he has regrets about his family. He wish he could have handled it better. Bruce Lee, like I said, I wish we could have known more about what happened to him afterward. He just I went to China. They paid me $1 million. I'm like, for what? Like, what did you get the $1 million for? That's what I mean. Like, it says that, and then doesn't go further. Doesn't elaborate. And like Ron Van Cleef, what happened to him? Like, what happened? That's what I mean. Like, we bring these guys up. Let's each one get like a little bit of a. Doesn't have to be 5 minutes for each person, but like each person. Oh, I went and did this. Oh, I went and did this. Oh, I went and did this. That would have been nice to see. That's what I mean by the ending felt a bit rushed. So, but I do have nitpicks here and there. I did overall enjoy it. I thought it was fun. Like I said, I would like to have seen a 3-hour version of this. Very informative. Left me wanting more. So I'm being greedy. But yeah, a whole lot of fun. So it's a fun one. With that said, I didn't mean for it to go for this long, but why not? Thanks for watching. Thanks once again to my friend Efree. And we will see you guys later.